He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
All right, a three-judge panel has blocked Trump's Liberation Day trade policies, and this is something that has shaken things up here in Washington, D.C., and luckily, we have at our disposal an attorney who is also a trade and economics expert on our staff at Breitbart News, the best of the best, John Carney. I'll bring in John in a second. You might be able to see him on your screen. I don't know how this stuff works. Misty deals with that. But I'll give you a background. Three judges on this panel, this international trade panel, that Carney will fill us in on the details of this. But three-judge panel, unanimous decision. And I did some quick research on these guys ahead of the show. This is sort of within my area of expertise. Not familiar with any of these people off the top. Judge Gary Katzman, nominated by Barack Obama in 2015 at the requisite top-tier law schools, clerk for Stephen Breyer, lecturer at Harvard Law School, and someone who is independent but had voted in Democrat primaries. And not a long history of a lot of political stuff, but was connected to at least one left-wing legal group called Working for Justice, and had decided against gun rights in one key case in his past, but a pretty thin resume that not thin resume, but not a ton of political stuff, to be honest. Judge Timothy Reif, this is an interesting one, nominated by President Trump in 2019, even though pretty much across the board, Democrat left-wing bona fides. And I wonder about these things because I don't know how we miss this stuff, and I pay attention a lot, and I was pretty locked in 2019. I don't know what's going on here. Like, why didn't we know about this guy? He was picked by President Trump, and he had donated to Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, the DCCC, Bill Clinton, just a lifelong left-wing guy, it appears, volunteered for Ted Kennedy in 1980. Just volunteering for Democrats all the way back since before I was born. Volunteered for John Kerry, volunteered for Barack Obama. So pretty noteworthy, and obviously his decisions did not strain that impression as a left-wing guy. I just don't know whose back was scratched to get him appointed by Trump and to cause Trump problems years later. Last one, Judge Jane Rastani. Jane Rastani is in her late 70s, a Reagan appointee for this three-judge panel, went to UC Berkeley. We always turn out the best alums, don't we? Alumni, UC Berkeley. And she is someone who his background was also not a lot of very noteworthy decisions that I came to, but it was certainly wants firm limits on Trump's ability to be able to tariff however he pleases. And the lawfare continues. We got to be even more lawfare today. They're leading the Breitbart News front page as we went on the air. Another judge thwarting Trump's ability to block Harvard's visa crackdown. So we're just exploring that. Allison Burroughs, she's more familiar, U.S. District Judge. She's blocked a bunch of these executive actions from Trump. So that one's going to play out over time. But remember, a lot of these will play out in the courts. Trump will win a lot of them. Particularly with regards to visas, the executive branch has granted very broad authority on visas. So I'm very optimistic that Trump's going to get his way on appeal. And at a minimum, he's sending a clear signal that there's a new sheriff in town. We're not messing around on this front. But I want to get first the legal and then the economic implications of the new tariff rulings from John Carney, our economic and finance editor, and the author of the Breitbart Business Digest, which is a must-read every day. John, I did a preamble as quick as I could about these judges. Let's start there. Did you come up with anything that I missed on these judges during your research this morning?
No, I think that's you summed it up very well. The guy who is a Trump appointee, a lot of people are making a big deal of that, is a Democrat. I mean, but
across
I will
the
say,
board. Like, there's no way. This is not a surreptitious one. This is not one that should have been missed. This was well known at his appointment, which is odd.
And, traditionally that actually does happen, where presidents appoint judges, not just their own party, but judges that a senator recommends. So if you have a senior senator from a state, very often he'll recommend judges. And what happens is Republicans tend to appoint a lot more Republicans, but they do appoint some Democrats to these, particularly at the lower court levels. This court in particular is not a very political court usually. As you said, like there's not a lot of notable cases when you're looking at what these judges have decided in the past, because they're not, they're not getting the like big, sexy constitutional cases usually. So it is not a very political court. I'm not surprised that you would have like a Trump Democrat, a Trump appointed Democrat on this court. They do tend to rule sort of very technically, and it's a very highly, the reason why it's its own court. Why is there a court for international trade? It's because it's a very technical body of law, and they don't hear the kind of cases, like drug dealer cases or terrorism cases that the normal federal courts do. So that's why it's not really on people's radar. So this is, in this instance, this is the right court to hear this.
And one thing that's interesting about the specialized court, I kind of like the idea of it because, we're out in California where we're part of the 9th district, which is like 3 times the size of other districts. And it's just sort of, if you're on this, it's an absurd farce, all of it is. But if you're a judge in this court, or if you're an attorney who tries cases in front of this court, then you're supposed to know all these opinions that are coming down. And it's like a full-time job reading what's happening in the court. And so, of course, it's designed for us to lose track of stuff. So it does make sense, I think, to have these more narrow specialties. I think about this, there's an analogy, my wife's in medicine, and they keep narrowing the specialties. Now, it's a two-edged sword in the sense that she trained into her late 30s, which is, that's not for everyone, but they keep narrowing the specialty as you go from you're a doctor and then you do, internal medicine, then she does oncology, and you can keep specializing into breast oncology or stuff like that. And it's one of these things where it does ultimately over time, we want to have specialists doing stuff, right?
Yeah. And that, we have specialists for patent courts, for trade courts, and this is one of the parts where they said, you know what, this is about an area that's, again, pretty technical. Let's make sure that we have a special court to hear it. And so, it's good news that it wasn't a, radical left-wing district judge that shut it down. But I will say that doesn't mean this court is right about the law.
Yeah.
This same court, the CIT, Court for International Trade, actually did strike down a steel tariff that Donald Trump put in place in 2018. What had happened was he announced the steel tariffs. Turkey was not behaving very well. So Donald Trump basically doubled the steel tariff on Turkey and got sued. And I think it's called Trans-Pacific, the case, and got sued. And this court said, oh, the president can't do that. He can't just go double the tariffs. He already announced the tariffs. He followed the procedure. He's not allowed to raise them again. And that case went to the Federal Circuit, and the Federal Circuit said, no, Court of International Trade, you're wrong. The president can raise those tariffs. He can announce them. And then if he thinks that he needs to raise them even higher than he initially announced, he doesn't have to go back, do a study again, go to the Commerce Department, see what they think. He can raise the tariffs. The Congress has given him that ability. So they have tried before in this court to restrict the president's tariff ability, and they have been shot down. That is a very possible, it's hard to say what's likely, but it is a very possible outcome that we see a very similar thing here, that the court says, oh, you're wrong. Congress did grant broad discretion to the president to impose these tariffs.
Right. So it feels like this is something that I'm optimistic this will get worked out, but I want to go step by step here. What tariffs are blocked at the moment?
Right. So it is 2 types of tariffs that the court was looking at. One, the fentanyl trafficking tariffs, those were imposed on China, Mexico, and Canada. Those were the things that were pretty key to getting Mexico to cooperate on our southern border. Canada really didn't like it. They were like, "Oh, why are we in that group?" But whatever. They also came along and they're cooperating. The other one is the Liberation Day tariffs, right? So that's all of these tariffs that they imposed, the big chart that they had with all the tariff numbers, the thing that is getting everybody to negotiate trade agreements with the Trump administration, they blocked those. But they're not really blocked yet. There's a 10-day time period in which the tariffs will remain. So the court said, quite sensibly, we know it's going to take, it takes a little time to get this done, but also they know that the administration is going to appeal this. The administration has said already that they're going to try to go straight to the Supreme Court, that they're going to say, hey, this is really interfering with our ability to do international diplomacy. You need to overturn this case right away. I don't know whether the Supreme Court will take them up on it, but that's going to be the next step, is try to get the Supreme Court to hear it.
Yeah, the Trump administration has asked for that, and we discussed this on the Breitbart Fight Club show. People have more detail on this, but I was noting that it is the Supreme Court's under no obligation to look at this quickly. They might, but we need to establish these mechanisms in place so that these judges can't completely stop work of the executive branch. But other tariffs remain, and there's other pursuits that the Trump administration can take to get these into place. So, John, what do you think what course of action do you think the Trump administration is going to take? Are they going to light their hair on fire and scream and rant and do a lot of truth bombs, or do you think that they're going to calmly regroup and try to impose the tariffs by another means?
So I think they're going to calmly regroup. They knew that they were definitely going to be challenged on these tariffs. The law that they're using here, it's called IEPA. It's the International Economic Emergency Powers Act. It goes back to the 70s. It's the law that presidents tend to use when they're imposing sanctions. So like Jimmy Carter used it on the Iranians. George Bush used it after 9/11. It is often used to like freeze assets or seize assets. It can be used to just altogether block a company from being able to sell things into the U.S., but it hasn't really been used to impose broad tariffs on countries or, in the case of the Liberation Day tariffs, basically on the whole world. They knew that that was a novel approach, that they were going to be challenged, that there was a good chance that at least at the initial level, that they could lose. Because when you're doing something new, the courts can say, we don't think you're allowed to do that. It's not tested. There's no, proof that you have this authority. They knew going into it that it was going to be challenged. And they're prepared for, going to the courts and saying, yeah, we know this is new. We know that we're doing something that hasn't been done, but it's something that needs to be done. It hasn't, other people did not do it because they lacked authority. They did it because they never tried. So I think they're going to calmly pursue this while at the same time preparing backup plans. In other words, the other ways, the other laws they can use to impose the tariffs, so that if this gets overturned, then they can say, if this decision is upheld, they can say, sure, you won, but it doesn't really matter because we're coming right back with the tariffs under Section 232, under Section, there's a whole bunch of different, national security, under anti-dumping. There's a whole bunch of ways they can get the tariffs back.
Yeah, I think that's good news. One thing that I'm concerned about here, John, and we could transition to some big, beautiful bill stuff here. The messaging is not as crisp as it once was. I think from the administration, I was really thrilled with their messaging. Maybe it's just a matter of people burning out. It's a big sprint at the end of the campaign and the transition, the first 100 days. But there's something going on here where I'm not feeling the messaging being delivered at as crisp of a level as I was very confident in the communications team. I still am, to be honest with you, in the scheme of things. But I just don't feel like people are selling what's going on to the public quite effectively. So just big picture, what do you think is the message the Trump administration should be conveying to the public right now about the tariffs?
I think that what they should say is that these tariffs are being put in place to accomplish important goals for the American people, and that the courts really shouldn't be standing in the way. Like think about this. We basically had a referendum on tariffs in the last election. Tariffs and the border were the central, inflation, I guess, as well.
That's right.
But were absolutely central to the campaign. Kamala Harris, remember, she talked about a national sales tax all the time. Donald Trump, then accused Donald Trump of wanting to impose that. Well, her, the slur of national sales tax didn't work. People voted for that. Donald Trump, said tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. It's his favorite word. He called himself the tariff man. So, the democratic legitimacy of tariffs is unquestioned. We know the American people voted for the tariff man. So the courts really should be careful about standing in the way. And I think that's what the message should be is, look, if the courts want to mess around with, make us do it under that rule or this rule, it's not such a big deal. We're going to do it. And the American people want us to do it. And you're right. I think we'll see probably even better messaging from the White House and from the Treasury Department and from the USTR, the United States Trade Representative, over the next coming couple days. They didn't know that this case was going to be decided yesterday. So they probably, they knew that they might lose it, but they didn't know that it was going to be decided yesterday. So it might take them a little while to gin up the spokespeople.
Wow. So we got breaking news here. Trump tariffs have now, and this is sort of funny about podcasting, is that for live radio, this would be extra exciting. But the breaking news as we're recording, Trump tariffs have been reinstated by appeals court, U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit. So they're back on for now. Emergency relief. And is being now considered by the Supreme Court. And so we should. So they're back, and they could go away again, but they're back. But this is the process.
This is one of the things I was saying would very likely happen, which is that they're not going to allow the lowest level court to step in the way of the president and let that stay. So what they did is and I haven't read what, it happened live while we're here, so I haven't read it yet. But what I imagine what they did is basically just stayed the lower court's order, said, okay, fine, we're not going to overturn that right away, but it's not going to take effect. And so the tariffs stay in place until there's a proper hearing, either at the Supreme Court or the Federal Circuit. That doesn't surprise me. I think it's good news. I think it would have been pretty awful for the lowest level of the court to be able to freeze the president's, one of his most important policies.
Yeah, good. And I do think that this is something that I feel like that we don't need to light our hair on fire yet. This stuff is going to be a process. Everyone knows it's going to be a process. And that's part of the nature of Trump's posture, where he has very high tolerance to risk and stress. And this is brand new for Washington, John. I was thinking about this in the context of DOGE, and I do want to talk about DOGE and Musk with you in a little bit. But what's so unfamiliar is that in Washington, we don't do risk. We do as conservative as we can get away with when it comes to appeasing our base, and we don't really like rocking the boat. And that's part of the nature of why everyone's so old and all senators are 90 years old. And it's because the people really want that sort of stability and dependability, and they don't want people to move fast and break things. This is part of the nature of his historic presidency. It's on a handful of Americans in our history. He's doing that and bringing people to his side in a rapid, he's just got that charisma to him. Musk is very similar, though not in the political space, but it is, I think this is one thing that Trump is used to this. He's prepared for people to confront him, to challenge him, to try to block him. And he moves forward unlike any other person I've ever seen.
Yeah, I would say, so for instance, in this trade case where in a lot of other administrations, what they would have been told by their legal advisors is, oh, that seems like an interesting theory, but it's not really one we should base our policy on because it's never been tried and, it's too risky. I think Donald Trump doesn't think that way at all. I think when you tell him, oh, well, we have this legal theory and we think it's good. We think we're right. We think we can do this. It's not been tried. So there is a risk. Donald Trump's like, yeah, let's go. We can do this. I'm not, he didn't get to where he is. I mean, frankly, he didn't get to be president by listening to the people who said, oh, no, that's just not the way we do things here.
Carney, you're gonna have to hang out because I can't resist doing my gold advertisement for the day because it just fits perfectly. I just pulled down, see how the stocks are doing right now. Dow's up 78 points, which is 0.1%. And S&P's up 15 points, which is 0.25%. No one knows what to make of any of this. No one knows. No one knows. Are we going up? Are we going down? The ultimate hedge against all the chaos and the insanity. And we love the chaos and the insanity is gold. And I have the best partners in the game of Priority Gold. So you text the word freedom to the number 24999, or you go to prioritygold.com/freedom. That's prioritygold.com/freedom, or text freedom to 24999. They will help you buy gold, get you a gold 401k. Gold IRA, you can get into those tax and penalty free. They'll give you a gold guide to fill you in on precious metals. A lot of the precious metals are, I think, going to boom under the Trump economy, silver included. So there's a lot of options for you. But it's with the roller coaster ride that is going to be the Trump economy, which is better than the Biden economy, which was all just bottoming out. But with the Trump economy, with him trying to shake things up, this is the move. Get into gold with the best people in the game, Priority Gold. So you got to do that. John, let's change gears. I want to talk about the big, beautiful bill, the OBBB. They're insisting on the one big, beautiful bill. I've lost the marketing game. I want to take back Build Back Better. I got a email of someone trying to explain to me that we don't do big, beautiful bill because it's too similar to Build Back Better. No, that's why we like to take back the language. We took the word woke from them. We took the word fake news from them. We like to take words from them. So I wanted to take it, BBB, back from Biden, but we can't do it, I guess.
I love it, Alex. I'm with you all the way. I would have gone with BBB as well. Like let's deny them the ownership of those three letters in a row like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so anyway, this is another one where I feel like the messaging is not crispy for me. And I'll tell you this because smart people who pay attention are not understanding that this is about essential spending. A lot of people are conflating it with DOGE, which is the discretionary spending, and they're acting like we're not codifying DOGE cuts, but the DOGE cuts are really going to get solidified during the appropriation bills, which I'm told we're actually going to get appropriations bills this year instead of just omnibus bills, as I've been whining about for over 10 years. But those are going to play out over the summer as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year, which ends in September. So these are separate things. People are not keeping them straight. And I got to say, it is on our good friends within the executive branch. They're the ones who got to sell this thing to us, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. You really aren't, you don't do discretionary cuts in reconciliation. So people who expected the codification of DOGE cuts in this bill, I think, didn't really understand the process properly. Now I get it, right? Like and with many things, I don't want all this stuff to always depend on executive orders that the next guy who comes into office can just rescind, right? Like so it's the right instinct. Let's get this stuff into law. This bill is not the law to get this stuff through. However, the other thing, besides just as you said, the appropriations bills, they're actually going to be putting in a bunch of, I'm told by administration sources that they are putting in a bunch of rescission orders that will go to Congress, where Congress can vote to take back the spending that was just authorized during the Biden administration. So they are moving ahead. It's not going to happen in this bill. And I know we called it they call it one big beautiful bill, but it really wasn't ever supposed to be everything. It wasn't supposed to be the everything bill, right?
No.
It
was supposed to be get the tax cuts locked in and get some of the agenda rolling. Like that was kind of
let's get the tax. As I said, let's get the tax cuts in, and then we can go in and start carving out the parts of the government that we don't want to be there. I mean, I do think Congress should legislate that USAID should go away. I don't there's all of these parts of the government that it turned out were spending insane amounts of money to basically giving it to their friends to carry out left-wing agendas. Congress should just zero out all of those budgets. It shouldn't just fall to, DOGE or the president to try to do that.
Yeah, totally. So what do you make of the, we all like cuts, but there's a lot of horse trading that's going to go on because Republicans know, I mentioned this in yesterday's broadcast, Republicans know this is heading for a win for Trump. But so they know that every vote counts. So everyone is going to try to get what they can. Their job is to fight for their values and constituents and not just blindly go along with everything. So people have requests. They want more cuts or they want to revisit debt ceiling. That's Rand Paul, who doesn't want to vote on an unlimited debt ceiling. If he's going to raise it, he wants more cuts. Ron Johnson wants way more cuts than we've seen. Where do you make the cuts right now, John? Do you see that as realistic, considering we must get something passed and we must get the tax cuts locked in?
Yeah, I would not do that in this bill, right? I think that absolutely set the tax levels where they should be so that the economy can grow and so that people in our economy who are overtaxed, families, tipped workers, retirees, get tax breaks. I think that making sure that we get the tax code right is a great prelude to doing all those cuts. It's not good to make the tax cut dependent on whether or not we did the discretionary budget cuts. I think that's actually backwards. Do the tax cut, have the economy growing as you want it to, and then go after the irresponsible spending. I don't think that those two things should be linked. Look, and I'm a fan. I'm one of the few fans of the debt ceiling. A lot of people think it's a ridiculous thing. I think it's good to have Congress have to authorize a raising of the debt ceiling every now and then, just as a reminder that we borrow and spend a lot of money. But again, for now, just pass the bill. If that includes, raising the debt ceiling for now, that's fine too. We can revisit the debt ceiling once we're doing the cuts in spending, but don't hold up the tax cuts for that.
It's really interesting how people can't keep this straight. And I just wonder, because me, my expertise is in communication, and then I build expertise when I take on big research projects. But it's one of these things where it's my day job is communication. I'm just not seeing anyone pointing out what you point out, which is so fundamental. We're all pro cuts, but the main thing here, we got to get the tax cuts locked in. I mean, that's number one. That's the job. Let's not lose the forest for the trees here. That's the game. And as any DOGE talk right now, we love DOGE. We love the spirit of DOGE. And I've been a huge Musk skeptic and a huge DOGE champion for that reason. The spirit of it is so important. But we're not talking about the same stuff. Like, he wasn't going around looking at the mandatory spending. He was going around looking at the discretionary spending. And I feel like unless you're consuming Breitbart content, then is anyone else making this point?
Yeah, not enough people. And as you said, the administration really should be putting that out there. And they should, I would bring in Rand Paul and say, yep, in a very friendly way, hey, Rand, look, we agree with you. The government's too big. It does too much. It spends too much. Let's get the tax cut in, and then we really will work with you. We really are going to try to reduce the size of the government. At the very least, the easy stuff is to just get rid of a bunch of the Biden increases in government. Go back to where we were, Trump 1.0. Get rid of almost all of the increased Biden spending. That should be pretty easy. I still think the government was too big in Trump 1.0. So, that should be the beginning, not the end of the cuts. But we've got a lot of time to do the cuts. We don't have a lot of time to lock in the tax cuts because they expire. And if we don't do it, the economy is going to be in a world of hurt. So we've got to get those in.
Okay, so let's talk about DOGE for a minute, because Musk's tenure in the government is winding down. This was always the plan, from what I'm told and what I can remember that he was kind of had a Memorial Day exit strategy. DOGE is supposed to go on through next summer, but he was going to pass the reins off. Maybe this is solidified by the fact that his businesses don't seem to be doing great and his popularity is on the wane, I think, in a lot of circles, which is I give him a lot of credit for sticking it out to this point in some ways. Yep. I mean, he seemed to have a pretty cool life ahead of this, and it joins up with Trump, and people think totally different of him. So I do admire that for him. That's very bold. But where do you think DOGE stands? And considering that, it seems like a lot of the good that was done, what did come out of the Senate, Rand Paul's still there, Joni Ernst is still there, and Russ Vought seems like a total killer. He's basically feels like he's going to be in charge. It's going forward. But John, what's happening? And give me your thoughts.
So I think you're right. This was always the plan. Elon Musk was not coming in to be, a permanent member of the Trump cabinet or anything like that. He was a outside consultant coming in to get the ball rolling. One, just by, as you pointed out, the force of his personality, but two, also taking a fresh approach to a lot of things, bringing in somebody who wasn't that deep in the weeds, who hadn't internalized the thing we were talking about earlier, which is people saying, no, we can't do it. We don't do things that way. Right? Like he didn't have any of that. And I think that was a huge virtue to bring him in. The other cool thing is he brought in a lot of people who were not going to work for the government, but now are. There are people in the Treasury Department, for instance, who are coming in to help the operations of the government work more efficiently, like literally doing the efficiency part of DOGE, where they are trying to say, why does it take 30 years to update the computer systems in the US government, right? Every time they try to update it, by the time they get around to getting the new systems in, they're 30 years old already. So, trying to get some of that nonsense straightened out, I think is helpful. And I think it probably created a very beneficial expectation for all future Republican presidents that when you come into office, immediately you should have an Elon Musk character just start tearing through things and looking for where the government has lost its mind. I mean, again, I'm picking on USAID because that I think was one of the biggest, scandals that it turned out. We had no idea how much money was being spent in our name, supposedly to advance American interests on radical left-wing projects. So every Republican president should this should be part of their presidency. They come in with a guy who has no political ambitions, right? It doesn't want to run for office, doesn't want to be appointed to anything else, just wants to come in, start chopping things down that shouldn't be standing, like a weed, the weed killer of is the way I think about it.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so this is why the spirit of DOGE lives on, the spirit of cutting lives on, but it is going to be a process, and we got to stay vigilant. I've reached out to Russ Vought. I want him on the show. I want to talk to him, and I haven't. I'll try to get him because we can. It'll be good to go from there. Yeah. Well, he's a pro, and we like pros. All right, John, I got two more for you today. First one, JD Vance is at a Bitcoin conference touting a once-in-a-generation opportunity to unleash innovation. I'm just bringing this on you. I have no idea what your take is on Bitcoin. I am lazily positive on it, but I admit that this is one of these ones where I just got completely lapped in terms of staying on top of the crypto and Bitcoin news, where I've just kind of thrown my hands up that I'm not going to be your crypto or Bitcoin guy. Maybe that should change. Maybe what I need to do is write a book about it, and then I'll become an expert, and then I'll be able to relay info to the audience forever. But I think I like it. Like the stable coin concept seems cool to me. I think the spirit of it's good. But JD really leaning into it. Is this a political pander? Or is this real?
I think it's real. I think that they are trying to, it's a little bit of a political pander in that there is no, it's not something the Democrats are into. They seem to be, like, for whatever reason, instinctually anti-crypto. But I also think that they see there's a lot of interesting ideas and people around the crypto world, people trying to come up with new ways of doing transactions, new ways of using blockchains. So I think they're genuinely enthusiastic about it. I'm with you in that I have a lot of friends in who are very crypto adjacent, but I do think also that, for ordinary people, you need to be wary of crypto pitchmen who are trying to get you to buy whatever their newest coin is and saying it's going to go up to a bazillion, right? That's a problem. If you want to dabble in it, you can, but don't get the sort of envy that people feel where they're like, oh, the 14-year-old down the street's a millionaire now, right?
Well, what about Haktua coin? Why isn't Vance in on that? I mean, it's that was the coin of the future.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. There's a lot of these fly-by-night coins, and they are scams. A lot of them, not all of them, but they're very scammy, and a lot of them have a very Ponzi-like scheme. They'll go up in value because there'll be another person you can sell it to, and another person, and then when you run out, the whole thing crashes. So that's a problem.
Okay, good. John, last one. You wrote a big essay on Fannie and Freddie and Trump's new plan for Fannie and Freddie, and this is one where I think this is sort of this is a complex thing. It's hard to even understand what Fannie and Freddie does, I think, for lay people. But can you break it down for people and what Trump's plan is?
Yeah. So Fannie and Freddie are mortgage guarantors. They don't lend people money, but they do buy mortgages and they guarantee mortgages that then get sold into mortgage-backed securities, so bonds, to investors. They help bring down the cost of mortgages in the United States because instead of a bank having to do all the lending, they're able to sell it to investors who want it, and that brings down the interest rates. So they're useful to have around. They also can be really dangerous. They built themselves into political powerhouses where they were able to basically deregulate themselves, and then they collapsed in 2008 in dramatic fashion, seized by the government, had to be bailed out with hundreds of billions of dollars. So, not something you want to lightly release back into the wild. But it has been a long time, and when they were first taken into call it government custody, into conservatorship, it was only supposed to be for a little while. Maybe that they were going to get released after a while. Maybe they would get broken up. But they've been in this stasis. Fannie and Freddie have been in conservatorship since 2008. Nobody ever thought it should go on that long. Donald Trump has said, I want to figure out how do you make this work a little better for taxpayers. I want to release them, sell them to the public, make some money. But you do want to do that with a lot of caution. And so part of my what I write about in the essay is that taxpayers did have to put up a lot of money to get these things to be revived. Donald Trump should be very careful that he's not just giving them away to people who stand to make billions of dollars if it's done wrong. I don't care if people make billions of dollars. That's fine. But I don't want that to be at the expense of taxpayers. I think they're going to try to do something, but I think it will take longer than people expect.
Well, and I think this is the big point here is it's nice that they're even trying because I started in journalism in 2008. And so it's the coming in, fresh. And I had no idea that it wasn't supposed to be a conservatorship. I thought that was it. I spent my entire time, 17 years in this business, thinking that that's just how it is, just this strange relationship. That is unique. And then now apparently it's not. Apparently he wants to let the little turtles finally go out to sea.
Although Bill Pulte, who's the head of the FHFA, appointed by Trump, said something pretty interesting. Then this shows you how wide of a range of possibilities there is. He said, maybe we'll sell them to the public, but keep them in conservatorship. Which I think is people are like, wait, what? How does that work? And I think his idea is that as long as they're in conservatorship, they're not just being supervised the way the FDIC supervises a bank. They're actually being run to a large extent by the government. And I think what he's saying is these things are pretty dangerous. We don't want to just like turn them loose. And particularly, again, they used to be politically dangerous. Their lobbyists were some of the most influential people in Capitol Hill. We don't want to let that happen again. So I think there's a wide range of possibilities of what might happen. They're not going, it was reassuring to me that it doesn't sound like they're like, oh, let's just get rid of them. Or let's just hand them off to, some hedge fund managers who own a bunch of the legacy shares from before they collapsed. Let's try to do this, thoughtfully. That's what it appears they're doing.
All right, John, great stuff. John Carney is at Carney, Carney on Twitter. He writes the Breitbart Business Digest. John and I are taking our show on the road. We're going to do the Kudlow radio show on Saturday morning. So those of you in the New York area, definitely check that out. And it shows up online eventually as well.
Yes.
So we'll be doing that. But one of the hardest working men in media, and we appreciate John for doing that. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Alex.
All right, I always get carried away when Carney's here because he's so good. But I do want to bring up some other items here. A federal judge extending an order blocking Trump administration from their ban on foreign students at Harvard. Judge Allison Burroughs, as I noted briefly with Carney, this is a familiar one, and she's blocks a lot of stuff. It's part of the nature of things. But again, the bottom line is that the executive branch has a broad authority over visas, and Trump is going to win this one on appeal. Marco Rubio's issued a visa ban for foreign officials who are censoring Americans. So basically, any sort of entity that censors Americans and attempting to regulate American companies, those people are going to be on the chopping block. Free speech is among the most cherished rights we enjoy as Americans, Rubio said. In some instances, foreign officials have taken flagrant censorship actions against U.S. tech companies and U.S. citizens and residents when they have no authority to do so. I'm announcing a new visa restriction policy that will apply to foreign nationals who are responsible for censorship or of protected expression in the United States. This is like an international extension of the First Amendment, which I just dig this outside the box thinking. Rubio is just becoming the star of the administration, and he's going to be in a great position to just totally change the country for the benefit with some of these visa programs. The State Department is going to revoke visas of Chinese students connected to the CCP. It's another big one. And they're basically going to block, I think, all visas to any foreign employees at Harvard, too. So not just the students, but also people who work there or otherwise affiliated getting grants. This is the whole point. They're being very explicit about the CCP here, which is new. The White House, I think, has been against the CCP in many ways. And a lot of their policies I've walked through in the show feels like every day since the beginning of the administration has come up. How the subtext of a lot of Trump's maneuvers have been about either uncoupling from China, weakening China, or countering China on the world stage. But this has been explicit now. We're talking about if you're a student coming from the CCP and you're just going to go back, that is not the point of American institutions. It is not just to come in and get 50 grand a year or whatever from foreigners at the expense of an American getting those jobs, getting those slots. Remember, every time we're choosing to educate an international student, that is a slot that could have gone to an American and didn't. Someone who's part of our system, whose families pay our tax base, whose families pay for those federal loans and grants that all the universities get, who pay for the expenditures that go to these think tanks associated with these universities coming from our government, all of those. Harvard has a program that is designed specifically to get federal grants. It's part of their fundraising wing. And so all of that is funded by we, the taxpayers. And for our children to lose spots to foreign students, they've got to be a really high bar and threshold for that. And certainly can't be coming from the CCP. It just does not make sense. I'm sure there's some exceptions that maybe you could convince me, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. And this feels like one where the State Department absolutely ought to revoke visas of students connected to the CCP at a minimum. Because, by the way, other Chinese students, I mean, who knows if they're maybe not on the CCP yet, but what are they going to do with that information? If they get information from working inside the hallowed halls of American academia, the Ivy Leagues, these think tanks are associated with it, go back to China with all that know-how and information. Why do we want that, especially at the expense of American students? Makes no sense. Not to mention economically drives up the price of the universities, which is not affordable. I'm thinking about, I do well at work. I've got a lot of jobs. Editor-in-chief of Breitbart, show's doing well. I got a book. My wife works hard. She makes money. We can't afford 4 students in the Ivy Leagues at once. So who's paying for this stuff? Who's paying for this stuff? It is the taxpayers. So if the taxpayers are going to pay for the balance, the difference, and the donors, it is, we cannot have the prices get pushed up by international competition from our rivals overseas. It makes it zero sense economically, and we have been way too tolerant of it. And it is high time that the Trump administration cracks down, because these universities are also cesspools for leftism, and it is where they incubate. The worst ideas that drive the institutional left are incubating at these institutions, and I just dig the crackdown in a major way. Because what is the left giving us? They're not giving us anything good. It is they're not, and I'm going to play some clips of deep leftist thought these days. But these people, they've got nothing to offer us. Here's Trump talking about Harvard. Check this out.
I mean, people with 1,600 on their boards don't get in, and they're letting people in, and they're bragging about how they're teaching them basic mathematics. Where did these people come from? So we have to look at the list, and Harvard has to understand the last thing I want to do is hurt them. They're hurting themselves. They're fighting. You know, Columbia has been really, they were very, very bad what they've done. They're very anti-Semitic and lots of other things. But they're working with us on finding a solution. And, you know, they're taking off that hot seat. But Harvard wants to fight. They want to show how smart they are. And they're getting their ass kicked. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
Perfect, no notes, just exactly right. It's if you fight back against Trump, then he is a monster. And if you negotiate with Trump, he's generally good to deal with. That's the bottom line. And almost everyone has figured this out, but there's a lot of people who just have too much pride. A lot of groups have too much pride. Harvard is one of those groups. Remember, the chairman of the board, Penny Pritzker, from the Hyatt family, heiress, sister of J.B. Pritzker, who's going to run for president in 2028, nearly ran in 2024. Against Trump. This is the Obama Democratic apparatus that he's going up against. It's not just China, it's also the Democrat machine. The Harvard Corporation is the Democrat machine. They're one and the same. And so they don't, just as a point of pride, they don't want to work with him. They don't see him as president. They see him just as a political foe. And if they keep testing it, it's going to keep going badly for them. And Trump will keep finding ways to make their lives difficult. They deserve it. They're blatantly anti-Semitic. They're against free speech. And they're basically trying to educate the CCP on how to beat us on the world stage, and charging Americans and then discriminating against Americans who deserve it in order to favor international students who can pay full freight. No, thank you. I'm out on it. All right. But in here, let's take a look at here are the great ideas that are coming out of the left. Check this out.
He wants to set up a system where he and his billionaire buddies and anybody that supports him get to run the show, and everybody else doesn't get a say, doesn't get to ask questions. And to me, that doesn't sound like the democracy that we've built America on. It sounds like creeping authoritarianism. And so the only way to push back on this is for Democrats to be really clear that if we win back a majority, we aren't just going to let bygones be bygones here. We have to go and investigate who paid Trump, who paid Musk, who made money off of these pardons, because that is really serious. And we can't just move along as if this is business as usual.
So this is a throwdown on our friend Ed Martin, who is guiding a lot of high-profile pardons. And I was talking about this with some of our Washington reporters at Breitbart earlier today. A lot more coming. But this is Congressman Gregorio Cesar, who is from Texas, young guy. And he did not get the memo of the 2024 election, which is that if you keep using lawfare to persecute people who beat you democratically, then it doesn't go well for Democrats. But this is the only language they know, is that the way to fight back is not just by winning, it is by investigating, it is trying to lock people up who are your political opponents. And that's the whole point, is he thinks everything's some sort of grand conspiracy. It's not just that Trump wants to, he has a limitless pardon power. Ask Joe Biden, who pardoned his family members for crimes we don't even know about, trying to shut down investigations, essentially. And then Joe Biden called out his own Department of Justice, attacked his own Department of Justice for potentially allowing for investigations to go on, including the Hunter Biden investigation. He had the opportunity to shut down all that stuff, and instead he just sniped at his own people. They're the ones who have manipulated our system of justice using lawfare in order to try to get their way politically. And this is where they're at, is that just know, if they ever win again, they're going to investigate all of us. That's the whole point. They want us all locked up. They do not believe in democracy. They do not acknowledge that Trump won. Popular vote, electoral college, every swing state, they don't care. They wouldn't investigate. They think any act he does as president is illegitimate. I want to rant that it's getting some attention online yesterday about how Democrats are not offering young men anything. I was wrong. The Democratic the establishment is offering young men a little bit. And we got a clip for you. Check this out.
Well, I also think it's just so abundantly clear that the people who say these things don't actually spend time talking to young men. You know this because we know each other in real life, but I spend a lot of time on college campuses, and I spend a lot of time with
young men.
I love young men. I love frat guys, and in that I realized, like, even the ones that identify as conservative are almost always pro-choice. They're almost always pro-gay marriage. You'd be surprised at the number of them who supported Black Lives Matter. And so I feel like people just kind of lump them into this box when the truth is, again, a lot of them are with us on the issues. They're just not part of our coalition because they feel like they're not welcomed in it.
Yeah, so this is a person named Olivia Giuliana. I don't know if that's a stage name or some sort of a personality name, but she is a major Democrat organizer. She's got hundreds of thousands of followers online, and she's poses with Joe Biden, and she continues to post pictures of Joe Biden. It's something that I'm not trying to do personal attacks because it's always uncomfortable when we do it, but she's 1,000 pounds. And it is noteworthy that this is what the Democrats have decided to do, is that I was pointing out yesterday how the Democrats have relinquished traditional beauty to the right. That if you believe in femininity and masculinity, if you believe in health and staying in shape, if you believe in traditional beauty the way we've always seen it throughout human history, that has become a right-wing value. It's really a conservative value. It's conserving things because we have to update everything, even if it makes things aesthetically less pleasing. This is a deeply unhealthy person who's leading a deeply unhealthy life. And this is the Democrats' initial retort. This is their initial answer. They're elevating this individual who is a very, very large person, morbidly obese, clearly someone who any doctor, respectable doctor, would tell this person that she needs to hit the weight room, hit the treadmill. I mean, I'm not trying to attack her as an individual. I'm just saying that she's offered herself up there as a Democrat activist, and the Democrats are offering her that. And this is one of these things where it shows you what I said yesterday. I dared them. I said, I'm giving you the playbook to try to get young men back. This is not the way. Having someone who is 500 pounds tell you that I love fat guys is not the formula to court young men. In fact, it's just going to become, she's going to become the object of mockery and ridicule. And I feel bad for her in that regard. I mean, she's a grown woman. She could put herself out there, but she's going to get attacked online because of how absurd this looked. She poses with a picture of Joe Biden, and she is 3 times Joe Biden's size. So it's not I know it's funny. I'm not trying to make it funny. I'm trying to make this literal, is that this is where they're going, is that they used to have the hottest actresses in Hollywood were their standard bearers. And that was what they were doing when they were winning. When they were winning, they were getting the hottest actresses around to say, we support Democrat politics, showing up at fundraisers, getting snapped with pictures of Obama. I mean, that's what worked for them. And now they're here where they get the heaviest person they can find to say she loves frat guys. And she's thinking that's what's going to beat the Maha movement. No, it's not. It's just not. So it just shows you how lost they are. All right. I always like Tim Miller clips. So Tim Miller runs the Bulwark podcast. He's a guy who I guess was an establishment Republican for a while and is now a leftist Democrat. And he was talking to Pete Buttigieg, who's gotten to glow up. He's got a beard now. He looks cool. His ideas are still bad, but Buttigieg looks cooler. And I'm going to play this clip for you to see. This is more. They're still brainstorming. Where do we go from here? They're still lost.
I'm giving you a DeLorean. And we are going to go back to like right after Biden gets the nomination in 2020. So, you just endorsed him. He hasn't picked Vice President Harris yet. Where the world is our oyster. We're in the middle of COVID.
So one thing Tim Miller does, part of his aesthetic, is he does the $20 white Apple plug-in analog headphones. And I don't know why he does this, but it's a funny calling card because this is a really successful podcast that he has. And he got tons and tons of listeners. I'm sure he makes a lot of money off of it. And I'm sure he could afford a sneaky headphone. I'm going to point. I got a custom headphone in my ear. I'm pointing to it. Those of you who are watching the screen, and I think it was like $40. It was kind of a pain to get, to be honest with you, but it's not expensive. I mean, you can get a sleek headphone that just pumps it right in your ear. It's even analog. It's not digital. I don't have any Bluetooth going on, but he does the white headphones, and he looks incredibly stressed out. You guys are missing this if you're not getting the visuals. I think this is part of his appeal. He always looks stressed out. And I feel like that channels the id of the Democrat Party right now. I think they're all very stressed out about things that are happening. And I think Tim Miller's face just gives him this sense of, he sees my pain. I'm like him. It's very relatable, his stress level. All right, here we go. Here's Buttigieg.
And you're Pete from today. And you get to talk to Pete from back then, or maybe Biden from back then, and you get to give them some advice, that would maybe prevent us from having this current president. What do you think you all should have done differently?
One, for the love of God, figure out a way to get the schools open sooner. We got very knee-jerk about this, and the costs were not just politically, but in a profound way. I think for the generation, the costs were profound. And I think anybody who was involved, who was, by the way, obviously doing their best to deal with a crisis that killed a million Americans.
Sure.
But I think most people involved would like to be able to have found a way to safely get more schools open more quickly. Obviously,
that was a great first answer. I had no idea there's so many ways you could have gone with that, but that is a good.
Well, but the problem is that he did nothing and no one did anything. And their reputation is that they just let all of the students suffer. And it's part of why younger people are not going to go to Democrats. Democrats were the ones, even though Trump was in charge, but it was really the Democrats that led the charge to keep schools closed and shame people when schools open. And the absurdity of it, so many people lost trust in the system. And the Democrats are the system. Trump continues to be an outsider trying to dismantle the system in terms of branding and perception. And it's the Democrats that are more representative of the establishment. And it was the establishment that thought that students should stay home and suffer instead of going to be with their peers in the schools. And so I think that it's going to be very hard for them to recuperate as people get older and realize that they were put through all of those lockdowns for nothing. And they lost friends to addictions, and people relapsed, and people were just getting wildly unhappy. Mental illness was spiking, and it was all wrong. And they just kept sticking to it, and they didn't say anything until it was way too late. So I guess it's not a terrible answer in the scheme of answers, but it's not how much ground Buttigieg is going to make with this point.
That's a good one.
I think from where I was sitting, obviously pay more attention to the border. That's real, and that's going to be something that you can't just take your time to deal with.
So they replaced Joe Biden with his own border czar at the last minute, and then they lost, and then Trump immediately went to work cracking down the border, and everyone loved it. So how many generations until the Democrats are going to be credible on the border? It's still in California. We're still a sanctuary state. We're adding new sanctuary cities out here. This is crazy stuff.
These are all things, by the way, that is super, policy-wise and politically. We have the benefit of hindsight to point to a lot of this, right? 3, even though you spent your entire political lifetime believing that the economy and jobs are the same thing, and if you have lots of jobs, it's a good economy, and if you have a problem with jobs, it's a bad economy. Remember that prices.
Look at Miller's face. Look at how stressed out he is. He just looks so stressed. I mean, I feel like this is exactly how he looks, how the Democrats feel. I think that's part of his appeal.
Is just as big a part of the economy. It just hasn't come up much in the last 40 years, right? Those are some things I'd be whispering.
So what would you have done? What would you have done differently on prices?
Okay, so this is great. I don't know where I didn't play the end of the clip in pre-production here, so I can't wait to hear what Buttigieg says. That is actually a terrific point, but he is still no solution. I think that is a big mistake the Democrats made, is that they saw that unemployment was low, but Biden inflation was high, and all of us who had jobs were getting worked at the grocery store. It was almost more insulting. It's the refrain that I hear from people in my life is they're shocked at how their money does not go nearly as far as they anticipated. When we were growing up and being told that if you work hard and you get into a good school and you stick with a job and you try to sock away a little bit when you can, and eventually things are going to get better. No, things are getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And that's because of the Biden inflation. And so what is Buttigieg going to say to fix it? Let's see.
Differently on prices then. What could you have done differently?
Look, no country was able to save their economy from COVID without getting into some inflation, some serious and
Okay, so step one is blame COVID.
serious and painful inflation. But I do think that there were a lot of moments where people kind of waved it away in the first year or two, even just like the conversation about it, the focus. It is true that we had no choice but to bring back the economy by any means necessary. I mean, we forget how grave the threat of depression was.
So that's it. There you go. He's got to glow up, but he's got nothing. All right. Missy, save the Michelle Obama clip for me. I don't need to go any longer than this. We had a good show here. It was a good show. Good Marlow show. Tomorrow, I'm going to give my book report on Original Sin, which I finished just before the show, and you will like it, I guarantee you. So I read the books you don't have to, and this is one you absolutely do not have to read. I will break it all down. I guarantee you my takes will not be the same as any other ones you've heard out there. So I'm looking forward to that. And thank you to Misty, and thanks you to all of you. Telling 10,000 friends and family members about the Marlow Show. Check out the Breitbart Fight Club and 5-star reviews. You guys know what to do to help me out. I appreciate it quite a bit. All right, talk to you tomorrow.